Hello, marketeers. Welcome to another episode of AEC Marketeer Podcast, exploring AEC marketing and beyond. I'm your host, Keelan Cox, and I'll be exploring marketing trends and answering your most pressing questions to help you thrive as an AEC marketeer. All right, marketeers, thank you so much for joining me. Today I have on John Tyreman, founder of Red Cedar Marketing and co-host of the Breaking BizDev podcast. John helps experts and firms use podcasting to build trust with buyers, grow their networks, and create endless marketing content. Welcome, John.
Keelan, I'm excited to be here, and marketeers, I'm excited to be here with you as well.
Yeah. So before we dig into basically all things podcasting, that is sort of your expertise, how did you get into this line of work? What's your story?
Yeah. Well, personally, I grew up playing music, and as you can probably see behind me, I've got the drum set up.
Yeah.
Playing drums in bands, and getting into writing and recording music. So that's kind of how I got into like the recording side of things. But my professional experience has been largely in serving professional service organizations. I worked at an agency called Hinge Marketing for about 7 years. Launched a podcast with them, leveraging my music experience, and that was called The Visible Expert, and that was in 2019. And then I launched another show with another agency in 2021 called the Digital Marketing Troupe. And so podcasting, recording has been kind of like this consistent theme throughout my career. And then I went out on my own in 22, and kind of that's where I am today.
Awesome. So you've seen podcasting basically from when it was like kind of new, where people hadn't really heard of podcasts, I would assume in 2019 to, 2021 launching that next one, because I feel like in 2020 things really blew up a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I had it was like an hour and a half, 2 hour commute to the office, and then another 2 hour commute back home. And so like I burned through all of my sports podcasts.
Right.
And then I was like, okay, well, one morning I thought, well, why don't I throw on a podcast, just like a business podcast, to see what's out there. And I started listening to shows like Two Bobs and the B2B Growth Show, and there were a few others, Entrepreneurs on Fire. Like those shows kind of showed me that, like, wow, podcasting could probably be a channel that we could use for the agency. And
Right.
so we decided to launch a show and experiment with that a little bit, and it worked. And in fact, Hinge, that agency, they're one of my clients today. I helped them launch a podcast called Spiraling Up a few months ago.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, kind of a full circle moment. But yeah, it was. But then you're right. In 2020, it kind of blew up where, obviously COVID and people were,
Right.
restricted indoors and virtual meetings and all of that jazz. And so yeah, there was a big injection into the market of not only podcasters, but podcast listeners as well.
Right.
And I think that's kind of like was a big catalyst in the growth of the technology around podcasting, was kind of stemmed from the COVID era. And that's what gave us tools like Riverside and Descript that makes editing so much easier.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of cool to be able to like watch the industry evolve a little bit over the course of the last, 7, 8, 9 years.
Right. So because you've helped so many businesses launch podcasts, I feel like you probably are the best person to answer this question of like, when and why should a business start a podcast? Because not every business, in my opinion, should have a podcast.
Yeah. Totally fair questions. Let's start with why.
Yeah.
So why would a business want to launch a podcast? I've interviewed many different podcast hosts, including yourself, Keelan.
Yes. Yeah.
You were a guest on one of my shows a few months, maybe it was like a year or so ago.
Yes. Minute.
But podcasting is really a networking accelerant, right? And so I like to say, want to be a guest on my podcast is a stronger offer than, hey, you want to jump on an intro call next week?
Right. Yep.
right? Because you're giving value to the guest. You're investing in that relationship. You're showing that you want to have a conversation about their point of view, about their perspective. And so that kind of stands out in a differentiated way, as opposed to, hey, you want to hop on an intro call where we can have virtual coffee and get to know each other.
Right.
It's kind of like a bland offer. But if you're saying, hey, let's start a relationship and let's co-create some content together, so that's a great way to forge stronger relationships with your market
Right.
and build more lasting relationships. So it's a network accelerant. That's one reason why a professional services firm would want to invest in podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few others. They're a great way to demonstrate your expertise.
Yeah.
And, it takes less time for, if you're thinking about it from like a firm perspective, it takes less time for a doer seller to record a 30-minute podcast conversation than it is to write a 2,000-word blog post.
Yes.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
imagine an architect sitting behind a blinking cursor in a Google Doc. So
That's gonna take
it's a
at
great.
least a year.
I know, right?
Just because
Yeah.
you use the architect.
Oh, I've got recency bias with that one.
Okay.
So it's a great way to demonstrate your expertise.
Sure.
In kind of like in the same vein, it's also a great way to show your personality and
Right.
use your voice, because you log on to LinkedIn and you scroll through a LinkedIn feed, and who knows if that CEO wrote that LinkedIn post with ChatGPT. Who knows if they had like a ghostwriter to come in and write it for you. But if you see a video of someone talking and speaking and showing their personality, their flaws, their imperfections, maybe stumbling a little bit to try to get the point across,
Right.
that's human, that's real, that's
Right.
authentic. And I think people are more drawn to that today.
Yeah, big time. I don't think I had considered the AI element when thinking about why a firm might want to start a podcast. That's food for thought, for sure.
Yeah, it 100% is, because I think like everyone was so quick to jump on a generative AI for content creation.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there are so many great use cases for AI, but that's probably the worst one, if we're being honest here.
Yeah. So then the when.
Yes, you're right. Thank you for keeping me on track. So you should start a podcast when you have perspective or insight or stories that your ideal clients will find valuable. So let's say you do original research, and you've done that original research and you have insights on a specific market that you serve. A podcast is a great vehicle to talk about that research, color it with stories,
Right.
and share perspective that you can't get anywhere else. Clients also, bring your clients on the podcast to tell the client success story, right? What is their situation? What were they faced with? Why did they come to you? And what did they achieve as a result? So
Sure.
like telling that story, having your clients as a guest on your podcast is a vehicle to be able to tell that story, to create case story content. You should start a podcast when you have the right host. And so this is an important
snaps
part,
for that one. Yep.
because there's a lot, you don't want to have the wrong person in the host seat for your firm's podcast.
Yeah.
So like marketeers that are listening, if you want to start a podcast for your firm, find someone who's curious, find someone who is a good listener and who has good speaking skills. But probably the most importantly, find someone who has the bandwidth to be able to invest the time in hosting a podcast. What do you have to say about that one, Keelan?
Oh, God. So when I was doing some research on like podcasting 101, I got asked to do that a lot in the early days when people were like, oh, podcasting might be a big deal. The stat that I saw was like, I think it was something wild, and this is a few years ago, like 75% of podcasts never make it past 3 months.
I've seen similar stat. I think it's like
Okay.
episode 10 or 3 months or something like that.
Yeah. And in my head, I'm like, that is so much money and time. Essentially, I don't want to say wasted, because there are uses for
that time and that effort. But if you don't have the time to dedicate to it now, like it's just not going to happen. Like it really is an investment. It's like a full strategy that you have to come up with to even get it to last past a year.
Launching a podcast, there is a coefficient of friction that you have to kind of get past
Yes.
to start to get momentum. And I think you're right that like 10 episode mark is a key mark, because at that point you're starting to get reps, you're starting to get in a groove, you're starting to get processes around you, you're seeing what works, what doesn't, and you're fine-tuning some details. And if you're doing that at that point, you're setting yourself up to be able to be sustainable in the long haul, because you're right, it is kind of like a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Because again, I would view you as probably the expert on podcasting for professional services. Well, so I should back that up with the episode that we did together. The interview that we did together was probably one of my favorite professional interactions of all time. Like it went beyond, being a great podcast interview or being interviewed, because it was so thoughtful, and you used every single piece of like what could be generated from a podcast episode in a way that just like unfolded. And what I mean by that is like the audio you then turned into a blog, and then you were using the video clips on social media. And I remember thinking, like, I had a part in this, but you did 90% of the legwork there, and I feel proud of it. And that was a really cool experience. So yeah, like I do view you as the go-to for this stuff, because it was just such a great experience. It was like, yeah, again, it was one of my favorite professional experiences of all time. So that said, you know your stuff. What trends are you seeing in podcasting for professional services, and how might they differ from, when we started in your case in 2019, my case early 2020?
Well, first of all, Keelan, thank you so much for saying that. And I'm so happy that you had such a great experience as a guest on my show. And yeah, I think that it just shows the utility of a podcast, right? It shows how much like recording a conversation with a video component, you're able to kind of create all the forms of content: video content, audio content, text-based content.
Yeah.
And so that was my point, and kind of doing all that and putting all of that effort into those interviews was to show that. And I'm so glad that you had a great experience. Yeah. So trends in shifts in the industry, I think we talked a little bit about it, of like that COVID boom and how that kind of laid the groundwork for the market to be viable for investment in tools and technology.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the one big thing is that I've seen is that the tech is now at a point where podcast production it doesn't have to be as laborious or tedious as it once used to be.
Yeah.
With transcript based editors and even AI facilitating some of like the transcript, chopping it up into chapter markers, turning it into like episode descriptions and generating title variations. So the technology has really streamlined podcast operations. It's kind of like one big thing that I've noticed. Another big trend has been video podcasts.
This is what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, well, Keelan, I can't tell you how many times, and I've seen this across almost every single one of my client accounts, is that new listeners discover the show through some video format, whether it's a short video clip or whether it's on YouTube search. They go and they watch video first, and then they'll subscribe to the show in an audio version.
Interesting.
And so I think so. And I think it's because people want to put like a face to a voice. They want to like discover you first. They want to know who you are.
Right.
And then once they know you enough, they then they like you enough to invite you into their car on their drive home, or while they're walking the dog or going to the gym.
Yeah. Which is interesting because I feel like it used to be the reverse. Like prior to podcasts, I used to listen to my favorite radio show and heard their voices every morning for 2-3 years, never knowing what they looked like. And then when I did see their faces, I was like, wowzers, that's not what I had in my head. So it's interesting that that's sort of reversed a bit. Do you think that's a symptom of just being online more? Like we're just on social media more. So if, hooking with a clip, like a video clip, is then what gets someone to invest the time?
From the research that I've found, the two top discovery channels for new podcasts are, number one, recommendations from friends.
Right.
And then number two is social media.
Yeah.
So I think that because the social platforms are prioritizing video content, that naturally podcasts are a great source of video content, so that it's just kind of like a natural connection with the social platforms podcasts are.
Yeah.
Where you create content in a podcast setting and then distribute short clips via social media. And I think there's been an influx of that kind of content. So there's a little bit of like leading the witness a little bit in that regard. But from what I understand about professional services marketing and all the research that I did at Hinge all those years, is that people want to do business with other people that they know, like, and trust.
Right.
And familiarity of seeing someone and hearing their voice with these short video clips on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook or wherever, the consistency of seeing someone's face over and over again, week after week after week, you start to build, like, you know them, who they are. And then you start to listen to them and you start to listen to their ideas. And then if that resonates with you, you kind of like, you want to get to know them more and more. So I think like that, you see that playing out a little bit here.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. Like that's why influencers are successful. So on that line of thought, then when it comes to like monetizing podcasts, like what are your recommendations there? What are you seeing? Are you seeing more podcasts looking to be monetized, or is there maybe that doesn't apply so much to professional services? Like what are you noticing?
So I think when people think about podcast monetization, I think a lot of times folks' minds jump immediately to sponsorships.
Correct. Yeah.
So before we talk about sponsorships, let's back up a little bit and let's first define, what are the goals of your podcast? Is your podcast to build brand visibility in the marketplace? Is your podcast designed to generate leads for services?
Yeah.
So those are two of the most common reasons for starting a podcast from my experience, but there could be others.
Yeah.
But let's take that first one, for example. So brand visibility. The way that if you value visibility in the marketplace, then one way to look at the value that's created from the podcast is to take a look at the organic video views you get on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, and then apply like industry benchmark CPM rates to those. And for those who don't know, CPM stands for cost per milli, or cost per thousand views. It's like a standard advertising benchmark. And I think it's like $20 for 1,000 views on LinkedIn is kind of like a good starting point. And then depending on how niche your audience is, you can adjust that. But I digressed. Applying those like paid media metrics to your organic performance of your video content is one way to say, hey, in October, we generated $1,000 worth of media value from our podcast.
Okay. So like the cost per milli, you're talking media value, as in like you would have had to pay this much for the same level of exposure.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. And, while that's not direct, that's not dollars in your pocket, that's a leading indicator that you can use to say, hey, the podcast is establishing value. It's generating value for the firm. We understand that, brand visibility is going to take a while to build an audience for this show.
Right.
If your goal is to generate leads, then that's a little bit more of a direct to revenue attribution, right? So
Right.
if your ideal clients also represent your ideal guests on your podcast, then those guests could become opportunities and closed won revenue down the road.
Right.
So there, that's a pretty easy line to attribute to revenue. The the catch with that is there really needs to be a system around nurturing those guests before the interview and after the interview.
Yeah.
So for example, like generating 5 different video clips from the conversation and then staggering them out, a few weeks out into the future, so there's a consistent touch point with that prospect. This is one example, but
Right.
keeping that conversation fresh in their mind. So there's ways to tie an investment in a podcast to revenue. It's just you have to look at it on the right time horizon.
Got it. Okay. And then can we talk about what you do specifically as part of Red Cedar to just give a little bit of context to basically why we're having this conversation?
Yeah, I help professional services firms and experts with podcast-led marketing. I help launch podcasts. We do ongoing podcast production work, podcast video clip distribution, consulting engagements to evaluate media value and develop sponsorship options. I'm working with a few clients on doing that now. To your point about podcast ROI. So that's how I help my clients.
Perfect. And then I noticed on your website, you have like a really cool infographic of your workflow.
Yeah.
And I was back checking it. I was like, okay, here, what am I doing versus what are John's best practices? Can you talk through your workflow of like when you have a guest, what does that look like?
Thinking through your podcast operation, if you want to go out and you want to have guests on your podcast, that's one way to organize your podcast. Another way is to have a co-host. You could have a monologue podcast, but if you wanted to pursue a guest interview series,
sure,
the most important part is to make the guest experience as frictionless as possible and as delightful as possible, right?
Right.
Riverside is a great platform for recording. It captures high def video content right to your computer, and then it uploads it separately to the cloud, so it doesn't compress the video footage.
Okay.
It gives you a lot more flexibility. It also records separate tracks. So like I would be on one track and you would be on another track, and then you would have a little bit more flexibility in post-production with that. But the cool thing about Riverside is that its studios are open 24/7, and you can create a studio within Riverside and jump in there and create content. Well, if you use your studio link in a Calendly like booking app, someone else can book a time to record your podcast in Riverside. So that makes it super easy. So for scheduling purposes, because going back and forth and trading emails on, hey, send me a list of dates that you're available. Hey, let's overlap that with my calendar. That kills momentum, and then it's just puts unnecessary stress on the guest. So I highly recommend like a Calendly with a Riverside integration. And then in that image, Descript is at the center of that little flywheel.
Yes.
I love that platform. I mean,
Descript is the best thing that has ever happened to me.
Yeah. You can import straight from Zoom. Do you use the publishing feature?
Like to publish videos and stuff?
Or to publish audio?
I've only used it to publish video. I've started using it as like a screen grab, because then it also transcribe and have like the captions at the bottom. So if someone doesn't want to listen to my voice I'm explaining something, they can just read it. But no, the audio, no, I haven't.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So when you're editing this episode, if you want to like jump in there and you just flip the composition to audio only, and then you can click publish, and I don't know if you use Buzzsprout or Podbean. I think those two are supported, but you could publish directly to those platforms from Descript. You don't
Oh,
have to download an audio file and re-upload it. It's just like a click of a button.
what?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We might have a conversation after this.
Yeah, I'll show you how to do it. Yeah,
Oh, that'd
for
be
sure.
awesome. Okay, cool.
So anyway, Descript,
Yeah.
powerful tool. It's at the center of my workflow because of things like that. It just makes it super easy to publish. It makes it super easy to edit. You can edit with the transcript editor. You can edit with the timeline editor for all those legacy podcasters out there. And it's an easy way to create video clips. You can have templates in there at a click of a button. It goes into that 9:16 vertical video layout. Makes it super easy. So from there, then that's where you push out to all your different platforms. Like I use Monday.com to organize all the video clips for all the clients that we manage short form content for, to keep it super organized. It's not on this visual, but I'm experimenting with this platform called Metricool. Have you heard of it?
I have not. I'm looking
Yeah.
to write this down. I'll have it in the video.
It's I'll shoot you a link after this too. But it's a platform where it connects to like across your different platforms. So I'll log in and I'll upload a video to push out to YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and X.
Okay.
And I'll type up a caption, and then I'll click into each one of those individual platform tabs and then adjust the caption for the specific channel. And then I'm able to schedule it all right there in that platform without having to go to either the individual platforms or, some platforms don't connect to like personal accounts. Some platforms aren't supported. And it's just like, I haven't found a platform that makes it super easy to push out video content. Metricool definitely does that. So just a quick
I'll
aside.
have to look into that. I think I use Sprout at the moment. Sprout.
Okay. Are you finding that easy to push out video content?
I haven't actually tried video content yet, to be totally honest. It's more been like scheduling, just like either the carousel of posts, like the PDFs, or your standard image and caption. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look into that though. Yeah, I'll let you know. I haven't tried it.
I'm just now like scratching the surface. I've only been using it for like a month or two.
Okay, cool.
So that's on like the video distribution side of things. And then if we get into text-based content,
Right.
I love the use case of feeding an AI a transcript and then working with the AI to develop an outline for a blog post. And then I haven't found any luck with using an AI to generate like quotes per se from the transcript, but you can always jump into the transcript in a platform like Descript and copy and paste right from the transcript.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like doing that like journalism style blog post where, you grab like a direct quote from an interview on the podcast, and then you use that text in the post as well. So that's like, it gives you a lot more like raw ingredients to be able to cook up a blog post with.
Yeah. Now that you say that, one platform that I have had success with, because I like that style as well, because it feels authentic.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel generated. Jasper, do you use Jasper?
I've heard good things about Jasper.
I like Jasper.
Okay.
Jasper actually pulls direct quotes.
Really? And it does a good job of it?
It does. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've used I forget which platform I was using, but a couple of them they would pull phantom quotes that the guest didn't really say.
Oh,
Like I had to like double check it all and
I don't remember hearing this.
Yeah, I was like, wait a second, I remember this conversation really well, but you definitely didn't say that.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, yeah, I haven't had that issue because I usually use it for like when I do thought leadership for my clients, I will record it, pop it into Descript, pull the transcript over to Jasper, and it's kind of nice to see what it pulls out as the more relevant quotes and information, and then I go from there.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Yeah,
there's a free version. You can give it a go.
so that's, yeah, I know. I kind of nerd out a little bit with on the tech side of things, but
Sure.
it's still so kind of new in the podcast world, and it was fueled by COVID, like we
Right.
talked about. So yeah, I like to roll up my sleeves and get into the tech.
I don't think you can be truly into podcasting if you're not also really into the tech behind it,
Yeah.
because it saves so much time. Like, I'm sure when you started, definitely when I started, it took me like 3 hours to edit a 20-minute audio. So I would just like,
Depends on how much of a perfectionist you are too.
yeah, see, and I am, unfortunately, like any weird mouth noises I had to fix, any uhs and ums I had to fix. So I was just like, it was like fine tooth comb. I couldn't figure out the audio, like getting that right. But then enter something like Descript, where it's done in 20 minutes. It's done as long as the episode is roughly like how long it takes me to edit an episode, just to make sure that nothing was taken out that shouldn't have been. But that's basically just because I have to re-listen to the episode.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah, when something saves you that much time, I think naturally you will geek out on this stuff.
Yeah. And well, and two, it's also hard to edit your own voice when you first start. When
Yeah.
you first listen back to your own voice, you're like, oh my God, do I really sound like
Make
that?
it stop. Yeah. 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 What I sound like on the podcast is not what I sound like in my head. So weird. So I think this ties in naturally to the whole guest experience that I mentioned earlier, because it was the first time where I was like, that's what it should feel like. And that's what I want my guests to feel like when they're on my podcast. Now, that's aspirational. I'm working towards it. But can you talk about the importance of the guest experience if and when you decide to start a podcast?
Yeah, let's say that your firm wants to start a podcast. Let's say marketeers that are listening to this right now, and
Yes.
they're like, I want to start a podcast for my firm.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, make sure that your goals are clearly defined. We're using this podcast because we want to interview people that align with our ideal clients, right?
Yeah.
And so make sure that that's mapped out first. And if that is indeed your goal, lead generation, then what I would recommend is, first of all, start out with your friendly contacts. When you're going out and you're going out and you're just getting started, you want people who want to say, yes, I'll be a guest, because it's you that's asking.
Yeah, they're doing you a solid.
They're doing you a solid, right? And so this does a couple things. It gives you reps early on with a friendly contact, kind of a safety net.
Yes.
It gives you content to launch and generate social credibility. So it's easier to say, hey, do you want to be a guest on my podcast? Here's a link to the show on Apple. Here's a link to the show on Spotify and YouTube. They're more likely to say yes than if you were to say, hey, I'm just now launching a podcast. We're not live yet. Will you be one of my first guests? Right? So have a strategy for the types of people that you're going to reach out to.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that folks kind of start with those friendly contacts and then kind of work their way out in their networks.
Yeah.
So this gives you reps at that kind of like ironing out that guest experience. Those friendly contacts also can give you feedback on what they liked, what they didn't like, what you should do, what would have stood out. So that's one thing. I think making the booking process easy, making the interview experience easy, being a good host in terms of guiding the conversation and asking good follow-up questions and making the guest feel comfortable during the interview.
Yeah.
And then afterward, providing them with, hey, we're going to promote the hell out of this episode. We're going to share it on LinkedIn. We're going to share it on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all sorts of different places. We're going to send this out to our email list. We're going to create a blog post from it. Show them that you're investing in the relationship.
Right. Yeah.
Because that's like, it's, professional services is all about relationships. And, you make that with little deposits like this. And then, that guest who is on your show, who gets a notification every other week on LinkedIn that you're sharing a video from that podcast episode that was from like 3 or 4 months ago, they're going to remember that, and that's going to stand out to them. And then when the time comes where they're in a position where they need a service like the one you provide, you're going to stand out in their mind. Oh, you know what? I had that conversation with Keelan a couple months ago. I'm going to reach out to her.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it all fits in with your strategy. If your intention is to generate leads, then you need to double down on the guest experience, and you need to make sure that that's nails,
Yeah. It's very similar to what's going on right now in the industry with client experience. I feel like they're running in parallel of like, there does need to be attention given to how you make people feel when you're delivering services and when you're doing work, and even in podcasts would be no exception, but it's an easier gauge to have.
Especially when we're in, when you get into tougher economic times, you want to hold on to the clients that you have.
Right.
And making that client experience a good positive thing is critical. I would even say podcasts can help with that, right? If your client if you have a good relationship with them, use your podcast as a vehicle to tell their story.
Right.
And to make a deposit into that relationship in that way.
Yeah, 100%. I'm like running through all the cases in my brain of like, yes. Sorry, that's what that was. That's perfect. So that said, thank you so much for having this conversation with me. I have some stuff to work on. You've given me so many good ideas. So thank you, first of all.
Keelan, I thank you for inviting me to be a guest on your show. I'm so glad that we were able to reconnect, and I'm just blown away that experience stood out in your mind. Just thank you so much for those kind words and that story and sharing that with me.
Hugely. Well, thank you for creating that experience. So if our listeners would like to get in touch with you, learn more about your work, listen to your podcast, Breaking BizDev, where should I direct them?
Well, you can check out my website, redcedarmarketing.com. And that has all the links to all the different shows in my portfolio, including Breaking BizDev. If you want to get in touch with me, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So shoot me a DM, send me a connection request, tell me that you heard me on Keelan's podcast, and would love to have a conversation.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Keelan.